Hey guys, Gavin here. Today we're going to look at the Brainworx limiter true peak. I think that's kind of backwards, but hey, whatever. This is a really awesome limiter plugin from Plugin Alliance. Previously, this plugin was available for $300 without a sale. So, very, very high-end plugin. Is it worth that? Yeah, we're going to dive into it and kind of take a look at a few things that it does. First things first, I've got a basic little pattern with the default FL template. So you'll see it's clipping over here on the master. That's on purpose. Let me turn on the True Peak limiter and let's hear what it does. So immediately you'll see lots of metering happening on over here. So this is a true peak limiter. Basically, true peak versus standard limiting. Normal limiting is supposed to be engaged at all times, but like you'll have a peak and there might be another peak, another kind of modulation peak right after it, but it gets ignored in favor of the next higher peak. So you can actually get some distortion with a normal limiter that you don't want. This one, a true peak limiter, actually catches all those little ones in between as well. So that basically makes this a much cleaner mixing tool. So you have your true peak measurement on the left. You have gain reduction, which shows you how hard the limiter itself is working. A couple of nice things are that you get a dynamic range measurement. Basically, how dynamic is the mix? Is it over-compressed? If this is over-compressed, your dynamic range is going to be dropping much lower than it probably should. And then you have your lovely LUFS for measuring the actual loudness or the perceived loudness of your song. Just kind of play all that again right quick. So I mean, that's really useful. Just the beat alone is already sitting about neg 12 LUFS, which would actually work for a streaming platform. And that's another thing that's really nice about this plugin is you can change the LUFS measurement. So I can set it so that I can see exactly where my LUFS should sit for streaming. So -14 is the ideal. I can see, like, if I really want a dynamic mix, one that is not severely compressed, neg 12 LUFS is pretty good. There's the competitive one, which is like you're competing against other people, I'm assuming is what that means in this case. So you want it to be a little bit louder, a little more compression. There's loud and louder, which those are really high LUFS ratings, but sometimes you might want that. You can even go for European, US, or Japanese broadcast, and for some reason Japanese broadcasts need like no LUFS, -24, that is low. You can even set a custom LUFS measurement just by double-clicking on the number here. Let's say I want it specifically to be 18 LUFS. Boom! Now it'll tell me when I'm hitting my target for my compression, my loudness, all that good stuff. So that's already awesome. You can even see whether everything's going to measure in short term, like over a small length of time, or if it's momentary, like very quick and fast. So you'll actually get different meter readings from that. Short term might be slightly better for like a mixing and mastering measurement, whereas momentary will give you a more accurate, here's exactly what's happening right now kind of measurement. You can meter both the signal coming in, and it even shows the clipping that's happening where it's going over 0 dB, or the out. Another really nice thing is that this thing actually has phase coherence, or kind of like a way to measure your phase issues in your mix right within the limiter right here. And what's cool is that using Ozone Imager 2, it's actually a pretty dang accurate representation of what's going on. So if I play it, I can see that there's a lot of +1 correlation on the right, and that's matching what's happening over here. It's like if I were to put it all the way in the middle, we're basically straight at +1. If I make it more stereo, you can see that moving around a lot more, and once it starts jumping from left to right, that's how you know that you have phase issues in your mix. And so like it's really neat to see that this is actually fairly accurate on the phase representation. A little slower than Ozone Imager, but again, it's built into the plugin, which is already a handy dandy feature. So let's dig into some more of the knobs now that we've discussed all the metering. So gain, let's say you got a quiet track, you want to make it louder. Boom, boost the gain, and suddenly you have a much better ceiling, like you're hitting your ceiling a lot easier. On the flip side of that, you can lower your ceiling instead of boosting the gain and still trigger the limiter in that way. So bring it all the way down to like -30 dB if you need. We got the link channel, which basically makes it so that as I decrease my ceiling, my gain increases. So that it's sort of like processing both at the exact same time. That can be handy at times. There is modern mode and classic mode. This just determines kind of how the compressor built into this limiter works. So modern is going to be fairly quick, punchy, a little more snappy. Classic is going to be a little bit flatter compression kind of across the board, a little safer. I actually like them both. I find that I like modern quite a bit. One nice feature is that it actually has some saturation built in with this XL saturation meter, which is a really handy thing you don't often find in a plugin like this, and I think it sounds pretty solid. It's subtle, very subtle, but subtle in all the right ways. You have your tone control, which is sort of like a tilt EQ. So if I play with that, if I play with that, let me get an EQ on here so we can kind of hear what it's doing. So if I play with it and move it to the left, gives me a little bit of a tighter bottom end. Move it to the right, suddenly the high end isn't quite as crisp, and the low end gets a little bit boosted actually, instead of just getting tighter. I can see a little more gain reduction happening. Another handy feature is that we have a high pass filter and a low pass filter built into here. A couple of important things to understand about it. Like, this is great for mixing in that, like with this, on your master channel, you can cut out everything below 30 hertz. And it can cut all the way up to 120, which actually the way it handles that I think sounds great. Listen. Just, again, another subtle effect, but I really like how it handles that, because it takes some of the grumpier saturation sound that you may or may not want and removes it. I think this is excellent for drums as well. If you throw this on your drum bus and you just want to remove some of the bass so that your, like a bass guitar or a bass synth can shine a little bit more in the mix, boom. Like, great and easy way to get that done, and I just love how it sounds. It sounds much better than standard EQ or even an actual filter in most cases. Then you have a low pass filter, and this one is tricky because it seems like it doesn't have very many numbers, right? It goes from 15 to 40. That's kilohertz. So that's actually 40,000 hertz. When you're tweaking this knob, you won't actually hear much of a difference until you get down to 20 kilohertz and lower, because 20 kilohertz is the kind of the upper range that the human ear can actually hear. So why does it have this ability to go to low pass all the way from 40 kilohertz and down? Because your mix might have high frequencies that you can't hear that are messing with your mix, triggering your compressor when it doesn't need to. If you're working with a sound that has all that extra frequency content and your DAW actually processes those frequencies. So this can be useful in reducing certain mixing problems related to high frequencies that we can't hear. But again, you're not going to hear a difference until you get below this 20 mark. And it's subtle as well. Like, even with headphones, that's still kind of hard for me to hear personally. It just basically takes the brightest, crispiest part of your sound and cuts it out. So if you have an out-of-control high-end, boom, easy to control there. You have these three neat little things down here. Your channel linking, which basically makes it so that the limiter is affecting both channels, I believe your left and right channels, equally. It may be referring to mid-side. I'm not 100% sure on that. Let me know in the comments if I'm messing up on that. There is a limiter mix, which basically makes it so that you can do freaking parallel limiting, which is amazing. Works a lot like parallel compression, and I think that it sounds fantastic. So let me boost my gain. We're going to kind of clip this thing, and then I'm going to play with the limiter mix. You'll see what I mean. So depending on what sounds you're working with, the parallel limiting may sound a little different, but it's a great mixing tool to really beef up a mix, especially when it's got plenty of other stuff going on at any point. And then you have the ability to kind of dim or soften the output of the limiter in case it's a bit louder than you might want it to be. Then for additional mixing tools on the left, you have the ability to swap your left and right stereo signals. You have the ability to solo specific things. So like, I can solo in place. And with that on, I can solo my left channel. You on phones, you probably might not hear that very well. Solo on the right. Then I can also solo just my mid channel, removing all stereo information. Notice how it just doesn't sound as big. Then I can solo just my side information, only the stereo stuff. And that's actually interesting because I can hear a little bit of my kick on the side, which means my bass frequencies have stereo information. And that's not good. That's going to mess with my mix quite a bit. So this can also be really useful for isolating mixing problems, finding out where your bass somehow has stereo frequencies. So not only is this a fantastic limiter that just sounds gorgeous in my opinion, especially with all the customization options that it has, but it's also a fantastic mix troubleshooting tool. A lot of the features that it comes with, just the loudness, the dynamic range measurement, tone control, limiter mix, and the ability to solo your mid and side individually. I personally haven't run into that a whole lot in different limiter plugins, especially like just all of this in one package. To top it all off, you also have the ability to A, B, C, or D what you've done. If you like what you've done but you want to try experimenting with it, you're not sure you want to keep it, you can copy this setting. Let's say I move over to B. I can paste it to make A and B identical, and then make little tweaks here and there to see how they compare between A, B, C, and D. You also have, what's that button do? Oh, cool. So this little button gets rid of all the metering. If all you want to do is just use your ears, boom, just click this little kind of window tab up here, and it makes it so that all you see is the knobs only. Just use your ears, bro, and that'll work. You can increase the size or decrease it a little. And one just kind of fun thing, you can change the color of all the LEDs and stuff. So like LED style lighting, you make it lime green, ice blue, which is my personal favorite, purple, or pink, and it's an unnecessary touch, but it's one that I think is just kind of neat that they threw in there. So what do I personally think of this plugin? I find it to be absolutely amazing. I do highly recommend it for mixing. It's great in that, like, Brainworx often has a lot of sales on the Plugin Alliance website throughout the year, and they can also be on sale for discount. I believe they're on Plugin Boutique now. I'll include links for all that in the description down below. So, I think that it's absolutely fantastic. Comparing it with other limiters, I just really like the sound that it actually outputs. I feel like most limiters are just nothing more than brick wall hard compressors. And that means everything sounds very pumpy. This one, I don't have that same pumpy effect. Not at all to the same degree. It's much easier to tweak this to get it to sound the way I like. I feel like with a lot of other limiters, even just like the standard fruity limiter, I have to work to get this thing to sound the way I want it to. And it just never quite does. This one actually does the trick for me. So, like, I think it's a fantastic plugin for mixing, mastering, all kinds of things. I use it regularly. I do highly recommend it. Brainworx is an incredible plugin company. So far, every single plugin of theirs that I've tried has been absolutely incredible. Whether it's hardware emulations or their own original plugins and sounds, just they come up with some incredible stuff that just sounds beautiful and amazing. So, highly recommend y'all try this plugin. Thank you very much for watching this video. Feel free to click the links in the description to purchase the plugin. Click like, subscribe, and the little notification bell if you just like me that much. Outside of that, thank you very much, and I'll see y'all later.